Hey, this is Megan, your host for Conversations for the Moving Self. Conversations for the Moving Self is for anyone who's passionate about movement and wants to take this for a long journey in their life. I know what it's like to be told that this isn't possible, but there is so much proof out there of all the different pathways that you can take, and one of them I'm sure aligns with you. And through these amazing practitioners and artists that I have met over the years, I'm here to share all of their knowledge and expertise of how we can work together to make this life a reality. So stay tuned, keep listening as we dive into these incredible stories of movement and well-being practitioners around the world, reminding us that this reality is possible. Welcome to Conversations for the Moving Self. Today I'm super excited to have Stephanie Mattiussi here. Stephanie and I met when I was a student at London Contemporary Dance School, where she was appointed as Head of Dance Science and Health at London Contemporary Dance School in 2022. She was previously the manager of National Institute of Dance Medicine and Science, as well as Head of Student Welfare at London Studio Centre, where her team won the One Dance UK Healthcare Team Award in 2021. Since 2021, she has been shortlisted for this national award on 3 different occasions and is an active volunteer for the International Association for Dance Medicine and Science since 2018, serving on several operational committees, including Chair of Development Committee, past member of the Dance Educators Committee, and currently sits on the Meetings and Events Committee. She's also a steering group member for Healthy Conservatoires Network and for Hungry to Dance. In addition to her leadership and advocacy roles, Steph contributes to the field as a reviewer for the Journal of Dance Medicine and Science, a position she has held since 2023. I'm super excited to have Steph here because I think from this day I met her, I always felt such a warmth and really held as a student in training, and not just in physical injury, but also the holistic picture as a student training to be a professional dancer and what that looks like. And what I think I really value around Steph's work is also the emphasis on supporting the dancer, but also encouraging the autonomy and knowledge within the dancer themselves to be able to carry that outside of their time in training. And every day I see Steph, like we were colleagues at London Contemporary Dance School as well for a bit of time, and just like her presence, her warmth, her energy is always like a warm hug when I see her. So super grateful to have you here today. Thanks for joining.
Oh, thank you for having me, and what a lovely introduction. I feel very overwhelmed, but that's really kind to say those things. And yeah, I think it's just meeting what I receive as well, because all the students at London Contemporary Dance School are just so wonderful. So that's really kind. Thank you. Is that nice introduction?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Like it's really nice to I only had, I think, a year with you when I was at school, but to see how you continue to evolve in the program and the way that I see in so many of the students how impacted they are by your presence. And even last year assisting for some of the students, it was super clear to me how empowered they felt by that side of their training. And I think that's really exciting to see in a space that sometimes it's not all it
Mm.
can be the opposite of that. And so, yeah, the big thank you for your just continued care and effort and knowledge. And yeah, we'll jump right into the opener question, which I like to ask every guest, how you're showing up today for your own movement and well-being practice, whatever that looks like today.
Yeah. Well, movement and care for myself is a little bit different at the moment. I am 10 days away from my due date. So very pregnant right now. So I'm mainly just showing up at the moment, day to day, with just very gentle movement, gentle breathing, gentle stretching, nothing really structured anymore. Um, because that's just what I feel my body needs at the moment. It's just a lot of gentleness, but still trying to kind of keep active. But yeah, and just so much gratitude for my body as well. Like I feel like I've had a really positive journey through pregnancy, and generally my body's been really kind to me, and so it's been a really enjoyable process. But yeah, looks a little bit different at the moment. I normally would, have an answer to do with like running or strength training or something like that, which I would definitely miss because it's a different kind of like exertion on the body. But yeah, this is keeping me busy at the moment.
Definitely. Yeah, like you have to listen and I can imagine there's moments where it's like, okay, 100% that's what I needed. And then there's other moments of like, I just want to do. I also liked what you're speaking about around gratitude. I think it's easy to, in our day-to-day lives, like forget about how amazing our body is. And
Mm,
it's a good one. Good one to keep coming back to.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I was wondering if you would be happy to share a bit about your journey with movement and well-being, like throughout your journey thus far, and what led you to dance science, but it
Mm.
any type of movement, not necessarily dance related as
Yeah, sure. So I think, growing up as a kid, like I really liked all different kinds of sports. But I did follow the like stereotypical route of like, baby ballet, tap modern from age 3. I can remember my first realization of what like music is as like a concept and like a popular phenomenon when I was dancing in a village hall to Spice Girls and like recognize like, oh, this is a thing. Like people have like a fan base to music. That never occurred to me before, and it's such a key memory of dancing around with our tap shoes to Spice Girls when we were really little. But yeah, so just with dance, like started very young, and then probably had a little bit of a pause with dancing and focused more on like other things when we moved house. And so I kind of moved away from my dance school. And then I was really fortunate that the secondary school that I went to had amazing dance provision, like really amazing teachers who just excited students about the arts and about dance for me specifically. And particularly with contemporary dance, we had two fantastic teachers who were both like so pivotal, I think, in like discovering what contemporary dance is as an art form rather than just a movement practice. Um, and then that led on to going to study contemporary dance at Middlesex University. And that's where I kind of have some crossover with then discovering what dance science is, because at Middlesex University they have a really great kind of dance science feature across the first, second, and the third year. So I realized I could go back to interests that I had at school. Loved science at school. Always found it really fascinating. And I think, like many people who end up in dance science, I just was like, wow, I can combine these two things together. Like, this is cool. And again, like, absolutely incredible faculty across the first, second, and third year who taught us at Middlesex. And then I think after that, what kind of led me further into dance science was that I actually didn't know what I wanted to do when I graduated. I was like really lost. I knew I didn't want to perform, but didn't know what else to do, and then discovered what a master's is and that you can do a master's in dance science. And then so I went and did the master's in dance science at Trinity Laban, which was a really positive experience. I was like young doing a master's because I just finished my undergraduate. So I think if I was to go back and do it again, I'd probably have a different experience because you've got the life experience on top of it. But it was really valuable. And it also meant that when I left that, they do like an internship where you can be like working in the dance science department. And that's kind of what led to all the different things I do in my career now, because it was so varied with experiences in research, experiences in like more healthcare administration, but like being able to see what dance like dance specialist healthcare is, and then obviously like with education as well. So it was a really lovely taster of like different areas of dance science and also a brilliant opportunity with making connections. So I think for like the early part of my career, most of my work came through connections from that internship, which was just so amazing. But yeah, I guess like other kind of like movement practices are like I absolutely loved hockey when I was like a teenager, like really, really enjoyed that. Sadly, I stopped because my ballet teacher was kind of the mind that you have to pick one or the other, kind of that kind of approach. But I did really, really love that a lot. And then running has always kind of featured in my life. But when I was at school, did more like kind of cross country running, and I actually didn't enjoy it loads. I think like looking back, I'm surprised that I stuck with it for that long. And I kind of have memories of going out like doing training and my dad like following on his bike to like because I was too young to like run, on my own, or if it was really bad weather, he'd follow in the car. Out running. Um, but yeah, like in hindsight, like actually didn't love it. And that was kind of the reason why I stopped when I was probably like mid-teens because I was not enjoying myself doing it that much. Um, and then throughout my kind of time when I took dance more seriously and then went to study at Middlesex and things like that, I then became that kind of dancer that is like I hate running, running's terrible. And if we had fitness classes and it involved running, I would be like, oh, like, this is rubbish and would, find it awful to run half a mile. It was just like the worst idea ever. Um, and then as I kind of moved on in like my like 20s, I'd like go on and off with running. I'd like try it a little bit and then stop again. And it was always on my own. So I'd always be like using an app or something like that to motivate me, but I was generally never consistent with it. Um, and then like yeah, around probably when I was like in my mid-20s, I was at the gym and was just on the treadmill, just like running. Um, Probably more as like a warm-up than a intention to like run very far. And I'd had my headphones in and I just was kind of plodding away. And I looked down and I'd ran 5 miles. And I remember thinking at the time, like, I mean, I've never run that far in my life. And although that was like, wow, like that's a really long way to run, but also this it was such a pivotal moment for me where I had appreciation for my body that I had never experienced before. Like I'd never felt that sadly in a dance context or in any other context where I'd like felt gratitude for my body. And I think like what I mentioned earlier, I think that I've always tried to keep that in mind with when I'm doing activities that this is a gift that your body can do these things, that you're able to do these things and yeah, it sounds so silly to have just like run on a treadmill and had this revelationary discovery, but for me it was so pivotal because I realized that a lot of the training I was doing was not making me happy. I was doing it for the wrong reasons.
Mm.
So yeah, revelationary moment on the treadmill. And yeah, I think, since then I've like joined a running club, and I think for me, like what I've realized is that I don't like doing exercise on my own or movement on my own. I rarely will be, I think disciplined is probably the word, but rarely be disciplined enough to like have a daily movement practice that's just my own. Like I would always have more enjoyment if it was with a community.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that's kind of where I've kind of drifted to now is that the running club is like really valuable for me because it's allowed me to enjoy running so much so that we now like I've since joining the running club done like marathons and ultra marathons and had all these kind of crazy experiences, and so like the 5 miles on the treadmill feels like such a distant memory to what I can do now with my body. But I think for me it's the community aspect of movement that is like really what motivates me and what feels special.
Yeah. I think you and I have talked about this in the past, but I'm not a runner. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I think I relate to like I get these spontaneous like, yeah, I'm gonna be a runner. And then I fall off, but I think it is out of like lack of community potentially. Dance and other movement forms I'm okay with being more solo, but I think running is one that for some reason the discipline feels harder in that. But I've been having this itch to run recently and
Mm.
then or to like pick it back up. And this one of the moms at the place where I'm teaching at the minute, the she's a huge runner and we've been talking about it for a few weeks and I think she could tell I was interested. And so I said to her the other day, I was like, maybe I should like sign up for a 5K or something, just like to give myself something on the calendar. And then she was like, yeah, but you should. And like, there's one with some of the students that are running soon. Like, you can do it with them. And already, I went actually to try and sign up for it, and it looks like it's closed. Like the registration is
Oh, no.
closed. But even just the concept of like knowing that potentially I could run it with the students already feels like enough community to make me go do it on my own now. And I was thinking this morning I went on a run. I was like, wow, it's so much easier when you have a little bit of something holding you accountable, some sense of community. It's shifting something for me. So very
Yeah.
interesting to hear about that. And yeah, thank you for sharing so much of your journey with it all. It's Yeah, super like cool to just hear everyone's individual paths. And I think this thing around like what dance science is, I'm grateful to have had practitioners in my training giving me a little bit of insight into this, but I wondered actually if you would be willing to share a little bit about what your general week looks like for example, with the role at LCDS, what that
Mm.
actually looks like, because I imagine some listeners are like, cool, that sounds interesting, but what does it mean? And so I would love to maybe just, I know it kind of is probably a little bit different every week, but
Yeah.
if you have a gist.
Yeah, it's I should start by saying like it is literally my dream job, and I definitely don't take for granted how lucky I am to have a job that allows me to do all these things. Because um, the positive thing is that you'll see aspects of these roles of this role in other places, but it's often like maybe two or three people share these responsibilities, but it's quite rare actually in like vocational dance settings to have this kind of role. So yeah, I'm super grateful to have it. But essentially the job has kind of three hats. So you'll have education, obviously like dance science education, healthcare, and then research as well. So I get to combine all three with my job. So yeah, as I said, like sometimes you might have someone who is a dance science lecturer, you might have someone else who's like a healthcare lead or a physiotherapist or a counselor within a dance space, and you might have someone who's a researcher, but super lucky to combine all three. Um, so day to day, or week to week generally will involve lots of like meetings with students. So with my wonderful colleague Naya, we will be like the first point of contact for our physical support services. So a lot of our meetings with students are either like initial triages of new concerns, whether it's physical health, injury, or like catch-ups, follow-ups to help be that kind of like linchpin or center point in their care. So they'll often work with lots of different practitioners that we have at LCDS. So whether it's like physio or counseling, injury psychology, nutrition, S&C. So our job is to kind of like circle back every now and again and check and see like how everything's progressing. So that's my favorite part of the job because it's working really closely with the students. I absolutely love that. Um, Other times of the week, I might be teaching. Teaching kind of fluctuates throughout the year. But yes, it might be teaching, and we teach across the first, second, and third year at LCDS. So it's really lovely to have the opportunity to revisit topics with students and I find that quite fun because you get to see how their journey as an artist has informed their thinking on something. Because we often, if we'll revisit something, this like depth and richness in the conversation as they go to second year and then to third year is like so beautiful to see. Um, and then in terms of research, that again will kind of ebb and flow because at LCDS we have a longitudinal research project. So we collect some data every term. So some weeks is more focused on that than others. And then we have other like special projects that we'll have from time to time where again, like our efforts might be a bit more focused on that research work. Yeah, that's so there's no pattern to the week. It is all over the place, which can sometimes be a bit crazy. Um, but I like the semi-structuredness of it. So
Yeah.
it's enjoyable in that sense. Yeah.
Almost feels like a little bit somehow the energy that I think freelancers
Oh,
are attracted to freelancing by, but
yeah.
but yeah, within one space, which is kind of cool. And yeah,
Yeah.
super like
Oh,
it was cool for me to hear you talk about it a little bit because I witnessed it from the student perspective and then from like a coworker's perspective, but to hear it all in one description is super cool. I'm like, ah, yeah, that is what you do.
sometimes I don't know what I do. But
Yeah, well, and I think in day to day you are pulled in a lot of different directions, and there's a lot of people in the building and things like that, which kind of leads me into another thing that I was curious to chat with you about around when working with a dancer one-on-one with a injury or situation, how it very quickly becomes a lot more than just the concern maybe they're bringing to you.
mm,
And what does it look like to lead a dancer in that moment where there's the actual situation that's occurred, but then also the feelings and the progression within their journey as a student and yeah, just what
mm,
does that look like as
mm.
in your role, but also as you as a human being approaching that situation for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, on that last point, like that is exactly where I would start is like approaching them as a human first. Like it, obviously the technical and artistry progression is important because that's why we're there. But whatever we're facing, like it is human first because ultimately, if you're not happy, satisfied, content, safe, it's not going to aid your technical and artistic progression anyway. Like maybe in the short term, if you made some sacrifices, but that's not sustainable. And I think that's super important to me is yeah, like viewing the person that I'm working with as a human first and really verbalizing that as well, because I want our students to learn that that is important in any situation so that when they come to face things on their own that they can remember that as well that like if is this a sacrifice for my human self that's not in my best interest to be able to progress myself artistically and being able to weigh up the risk and benefit of that decision because sometimes yeah maybe we might take risks and it will pay off and obviously that's the fun of life but yeah I think really instilling that it's human first and also that um, the hard thing about the job is that there is no formula for like, injury follows this route and like ill health follows this route. Like life is so messy and you have all these textbooks and like, there's lots of textbooks about dance science now that give all these recommendations, but it is never one size fits all, as we know, because that's quite a common phenomenon in like health and well-being anyway, that individualized is really important. But yeah, I think just embracing the messiness and the non-linear progression that someone will make as well is really important to set expectations, I guess, because we often dancers are very ambitious. And so when it comes to something like rehab, for example, they will also be ambitious with that rehab. So I think really reminding them of like what that meandering journey might look like. And we're really fortunate at LCDS to work with an injury psychologist with our students, and his services are really valuable to be able to unpack and to talk about and give context and theory and application to that notion as well. But yeah, and I think with what you said about kind of leading someone through that process, I wouldn't view it as leading. I think I want to stand like alongside someone rather than like leading
Mhm.
them through. So I kind of see it more as like I've talked before about like having like when you go bowling and you put the buffers up on the side, like that's kind of what we're there for. Like so
Yeah,
got some room to sway, but like ultimately we'll, if things are going a bit hairy, then that's where we'll be like, hey, like make them
yeah. I think
because
it's a
I
great
also think
metaphor. It makes a lot
that's
of sense.
how people maybe best learn. Is like having the freedom to play around with ideas and
Mhm.
to explore rather than just follow.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, like whatever we're facing, like I said at the beginning about being human first, like I really want to always support the student to go back to like whatever their core values are or what brings them joy. And I guess I'm saying that with the mind of, like sometimes if someone has ill health or is injured, like maybe actually like being here at the moment is that's not the thing that's bringing you joy, and like having the freedom to choose like maybe I'll take some time out and come back next year, and that's not actually such a crazy idea because I'm staying here and I'm miserable and I'm spending all my time on my fees and things like that. So I think it's yeah, helping to find a way back to joy through what is often supporting people with like really crappy situations that are, not the most fun life experiences, but hopefully have something positive that comes out of them.
Mm, I loved I love this thing, and I think I'm having like flashbacks to school of the conversation around coming back to joy and coming back to your core values and rooting it from that place rather than rooting it from any sort of external achievement related thing. And also, as you were speaking, I was curious around like what I feel you and all of the team at the place approach well-being is very, very, very holistic, and was maybe the first time in my journey that I was working with a health and well-being team who it was like integrated into the whole picture of dance rather than like I think just circumstantially before I had dance and then I had the health and how to make them merge into one world. That also is the human. And I wondered what led you to that. I feel like it's a huge value of yours as a human, not just something you've been asked to do in the job. I can feel it in the way that you work, and what kind of led you to that approach.
I think my like I wouldn't say it has consciously always been that way. I think I have maybe gone in that direction by learning from other colleagues who model that so brilliantly. And the wonderful thing about this area of work is that there is so many brilliant practitioners. Like, and it's a really small like pool relative, I guess, to like other industries. Um, so yeah, I'd say like it's from being able to watch and observe other practitioners or educators in action. Um, Particularly, I think from an educational point of view, my colleague Elsa has really like opened my eyes to the importance of how dance science is taught. Um, and yeah, I think also from obviously working with students, like being able to see through working with so many students now that the the consequences of life like really amplify or soothe the situation that is the primary thing that they're facing. And how it might feel like subtle things, but actually like all of those things stack up when we're
Yeah.
facing them all at once. And so I think, yeah, it's also just been so fortunate to have worked with students so closely and to like learn so many different life experiences and stories that it's helped me to see the importance of viewing the person as a whole and trying to tackle things as a whole. Um, because those other stresses can't be ignored. Like they're not going to go anywhere when we're working on them. They're just going to circle back around and be a stressor and a drain on whatever we're facing again. So yeah, I think from that aspect as well.
Mm, mm, yes, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And just interesting to it kind of why it came to mind, I think, was when you were talking about learning through experience and then rather than leading a
Mm.
student, trying to stand by their side. And I loved this metaphor of the bowling bumpers because I think it feels very apparent as a student who worked with you, the way that that then empowers the autonomy after leaving. And I think was extremely helpful as I was transitioning out of school to see those skills there rather than being like, well, okay, I used to know how to do this, but it was actually not me knowing how to do it, it was someone else doing it for me. But instead, it was like,
Yeah,
as I was around practitioners who were helping go on the journey with me and support me in moments.
exactly. Yeah. And I think to be honest, like I learned through what feels like failing previous students by doing what would be called like hand holding, like, too much trying to like try like you're trying it came from a really good intention of like I'm trying my best to support this person, but actually by doing those things for them, you're not allowing them to explore, play, fail themselves. And I think that definitely comes from my own learning of trying to do too much for someone. Because I think that's my like natural inclination is like, got to fix this, got to do this, got to control this. Like that's my like default as a human. So I really need to like measure that. And I'm very aware of that in terms of like what that kind of limit might be with working with students now, is to, yeah, feel comfortable to step back. And if someone kind of, if we're talking about like injury recovery, for example, like if someone kind of drifts from a motivational point of view, like it isn't always, I don't always have to fix that, because there might be a reason, and maybe it's okay that their motivation drifts a bit. And, like what we were talking about earlier, it's all individual and contextualized, but yeah, it's kind of allowing the messy pathway to play out rather than the perfect pathway to,
Mm, mm.
yeah.
Yeah. Brings me on to the question around how it doesn't necessarily have to be in when you're guiding students, but uh, you just as Steph, navigate the tension between conditioning the body and caring for it.
Hmm, this is such a good question. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking about um like running versus dancing. And I was thinking about how with running, particularly as I've got more interested in long distance running and doing like ultra running and things like that, that can, and for me has like put my body and mind and soul in some really painful places. And we one of the first ultra marathons we did with my friends was from London to Brighton, and it was way too far in the deep end, like completely ridiculous. And you know I felt so scared at one point for how much I was pushing myself and didn't know what the outcome was going to be. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and we still had like 15 kilometers to go. It was ridiculous, like it was absolutely ridiculous. And I was in pain for days, picked up an injury, my poor nervous system was probably recovering for weeks. And, if I take that experience, which I would go back and do again, probably better prepared, but, ultimately, like it's, it's something that I would go back to and like seek out that kind of discomfort. And, but
Yeah.
if I was to experience that in a dance context, I'd be horrified. And I find that really interesting to unpick. And I was thinking about how, like, is it the fact that there's autonomy, like that running experience was like fully my choice, whereas in dance, unless you're fully guiding your own practice, you are ultimately being led by a facilitator, an educator, an institution, an artistic director, whatever. And is the shift in power dynamics what makes that problematic in a dance context? I don't know. But yeah, when I
Mm.
was kind of thinking about this question before, I thought, wow, that's so strange that I feel like one is more acceptable in a context than another. And I'm certainly not advocating for running to be miserable and painful, but I just find it interesting that you can explore to that level, or I feel I can explore to that level in running. But yeah, I think to go back to the question, like about that tension between the two, I think similar to what we've said already around, I think in order to explore what our bodies are capable of, there needs to be like freedom to play and to make mistakes. And the more important bit there is providing space to learn from mistakes that we've made, whether it's muscle soreness that lasts for days and have to kind of, hold the handrail as we're going up the stairs or something like that, like that kind of muscle, or like sometimes we might injure ourselves because we push ourselves too far. And um, I think it's really important to like facilitate a headspace where we can learn from them rather than keep revisiting them, which is
Mm.
ultimately why I think in order to, I mean, we'll never fully nail that balance, right? Because we're constantly evolving and learning. But I think to move to a better balance, it's coming back to that educational aspect of feeling informed. And I think moving away from myself and thinking about it in work, like my brilliant colleague Kyle, like he delivers group-based strength and conditioning, but also in a one-to-one setting as well. And something that he really instills with our first years is this notion of effort and exploring effort. And I think the thing that's quite special about that is that you are able to have this experience of effort without it having to be negative. So it doesn't always have to be that I over push myself and therefore, as long as I have a positive mindset and learn something, it was worth it. Like you can actually have the experience of like putting in effort, feeling that physical exertion that's maybe right at that top threshold of what you were capable of, but the risk isn't there. Like you haven't created crazy soreness or injury or stress to the nervous system that's super significant, something like that. Like you can have, like, they both can exist. Be a
Mm.
positive learning and to keep progressing that physical training whilst caring for your body as well. Um, but I think for dance, it's like a really tricky notion because, but especially in contemporary dance, because your physical ambition of physicality that you desire is going to shift depending on where you see yourself as an artist. Like for someone who has a really physical practice, like that physical conditioning is going to be really vital to be able to explore their work in a way they want to. Whereas for another artist, it's not as important. Like I'm sure they'll be like a baseline of what they feel they might need to feel competent to approach first certain things, but it's less important. So the balance for that person will be slightly different. And I think that's what I find quite fun with working at LCDS is that there isn't a set formula of like our graduates must be able to do X, Y, and Z. Otherwise, they're not going to
Mhm.
have to, like everyone's going to have different trajectories, and that's quite fun to support.
Yeah. I loved what I think was coming up for me the whole time while you were speaking was just around that you have to to know yourself as a human and all it coming back to like curiosity and effort. No, effort, yes. Coming
Mm.
back to curiosity and exploring. And
Mm.
then because I think when you were speaking about exploring effort and exploring individualized versions of like what do you want? What does it look like for you? And even when we were speaking around running versus dance, it did make me think about like different artists that I've heard of speak around like Marina Abramovic. I'm not an expert on her work, but like I have read things in the past around how much she's pushed her like exertion and effort and through durational things, and it made me think when you said maybe it's something around this idea that it's through autonomy, it feels a little bit more quote unquote
Mm.
allowed or somehow healthier
Yeah,
uh, with
very
when it's
much.
in your own hands rather than when it becomes something that we are, if a dancer is being asked to do it because they are a, a piece of the puzzle, then it doesn't
Mm.
feel so nice. I don't have a better word than nice right now, but
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think in that like individual training as a dancer, I think there is something, I mean, I suppose for any movement practice, like the because a lot of that physical training like can require discomfort, right? Like so that whether it's exertion or like that kind of mental tussle that will be happening. And I think when the approach is shifted, that it's like you said, like a place from curiosity to like what am I capable of? It feels, yeah, like I guess for me it feels more enjoyable that I like can play with like what am I capable of, but also being able to recognize, okay, that's and then that's too far.
Yeah, yeah.
We've got there.
I decide that stuff.
Yeah.
Or I learned that was enough.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. It's super interesting. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
now I want to try this and that. And
I wouldn't recommend running from London to Brighton as a starter, I'll put it that way.
yeah, wow, that it sounds intense. Even like I've had friends in the past walk from like Cambridge to London or like do
Oh
different things like
wow.
that. And I'm always like,
Yeah.
wow, it's I
I think we
I
just do it
can't
for the
imagine.
snacks. I think
Right.
there's just so many snack stations that that's what keeps you going.
Yeah, super interesting though. Like it does really, really intrigue me just to be able to like experience all the different things that come up in that. And
Yeah.
yeah, you learn a lot about yourself, I imagine, in those moments. But
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that kind of mental exploration is what I don't think I actually enjoy the physical like pain, discomfort. I think it's the mental struggle that is really interesting to like experience. Yeah.
super, super, it's all really interesting to me. My mind's a bit stuck on it now, but I wanted to head into the closing question, which is actually related to another question that I had uh, brought up to you as well around like you as a human when you're caring for all these students. And so the previous guest asked, it's difficult to be enthusiastic all of the time. So when
Mhm.
your energy is low, how do you revitalize and refresh your practice?
Mhm. Um, yeah, it's definitely so hard to maintain that. I think in my natural default is to like withdraw, like when I'm in like feeling like that. Because often I'm feeling that way because I feel overstimulated. So that often is like what kind of impacts my motivation. Um, so I think I've really just tried to not feel guilt with that, and actually like I'm okay with just taking a break from movement practices to just recuperate and have a little bit of a pause, and that it doesn't matter because I'm not an elite runner. Like it doesn't matter if I take some time off. Um, but I think, yeah, because that typically is like my main movement practice now, then I would just still keep in touch with my like community. So like my kind of friends from the running club, who like really uplift me and are such like wonderful supportive friends that yeah, I think ultimately like that gives me the right headspace to just reset. Um,
Mm,
because yeah, my favorite saying is that you can't pour from an empty cup. So like I've learned the hard way that if if I am not feeling great, I'm just not going to show up great for my partner, for friends, family, and work and with students. And like the as as wonderful as the job is, like it is, like I said, it literally is an absolute dream, but it is also really draining. And like the boundaries that are needed there are so important to not impact other areas of life and yeah, like spill into things like taking out time from being motivated to move and things like that. So yeah, I think
mm,
resting, not being guilty, boundaries, they were big
yeah.
things that kind of
Mhm.
helped me reset.
Yeah, 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 yeah. They're really good ones, important ones. And I think like it's important to keep, it's nice to hear you share it because I think it's also one of those things that it's important to just keep coming back to and also talking about it
Mm,
makes, I think, makes it easier to feel less guilty when when we all talk about like, oh, hey, like I agree. I also like it's an important thing where I think sometimes when we isolate ourselves in the decision to take care of ourselves, then if we feel even more crazy or like we start to overthink and that sort
yeah,
of thing, where just
yeah.
even like you said, of just staying in touch with the community and being human about it and allowing yourself that grace then allows you to feel empowered in the decision and makes it rooted in why we're doing it anyway, like to care for
Yeah.
yourself rather than it than feeling like a counteractive thing somehow by taking the decision and then feeling guilty and then being like, okay, well, now I've wasted energy. Wasted might be the wrong word, but like I've spent energy feeling guilty about trying to give myself space to find more energy. Uh,
Totally, yeah. And I think like I'm really conscious now that obviously being in that educational setting, like what I like my behaviors may model that for the students that I work with. And so I used to be of a mindset where I would, be I'd try and be available all hours, which saying that out loud now is just ridiculous. The thing that, but like that, I also in a previous job was working there during COVID, where like structure went out the window completely. But I think it's been such a lesson to learn that yeah, like in the position that many of us will be in, where we're working with others, where you potentially are impressionable about what your behaviors are towards your own health and well-being. I feel very conscientious of that now, and so even things like going home sort of on time. Like, I don't want my students to see me at work like way past when I should be at home, or like, like making sure that I kind of share and talk about like what my movement enjoyments are and things so they can see like that what is and I think that accountability really helps me as well. Because
yeah.
I really don't ever want to take for granted what's important to model for I mean, they're young adults, right? Like they're not students, like in terms of
Yeah.
behaviors, but you're still acting in that role where you could have an influence over like how someone might perceive ways to take care of their own health and well-being. So yeah, everything you just said is like super important for me to hold in
Mhm.
mind, even if it isn't always come by that easily.
Yeah, definitely. I totally understand. Thank you so much for sharing so openly and so generously. And it's been such a pleasure to chat all things dance and movement and well-being and yeah, the intersection of those worlds. So
Mm,
big thank you.
thank you for having me.
We at Conversations for the Moving Self want to say one final big thank you. We know what it's like out there to try and pursue this movement career in a long term sustainable way. When it gets hard, You know where we are. Stay tuned. Next Saturday, we have another amazing episode coming out with a new guest to share their experience of navigating this career firsthand. So, big thank you again, and see you next time on Conversations for the Moving Self.